Yeah, it's the first thing. Like I transitioned out of the military in a contractor with a Central Intelligence Agency, and it was a smack in the face because, call it a brotherhood, call it tribe, call it whatever you want. I had a great run with amazing human beings. What I noticed when I went from the military to waking up in an air mattress in an apartment in San Antonio is civilian life sucks. Where do you go for connectivity, for tribe? If you don't belong to a dojo, if you don't belong to a gym, if you don't go to a church, then you don't have that feeling of purpose and that feeling of community. So I went from a place where my family were the teammates that I served with and transitioned into civilian life where everybody's worried about their own game. They're very selfish. I mean, for the first time, likely in the history of our country, you don't know your neighbors. You don't know who's in the apartment next door to you. You're escaping trying to even interact with those people, and it's fucking depressing. So I thought the military experience for me was easy. And a lot of guys who come back and have to deal with bills, relationships, all the shit that civilians deal with, that's hard. And that's the difficulty. It's not necessarily a traumatic experience in one moment in time that took place that is the PTSD. It's like getting kicked in the dick every day being a civilian when you didn't have to before because you have everything, at your fingertips. That would give you PTSD if you didn't have it.
Have you ever read Sebastian Junger's book, Tribe?
Great book. Great sum up of the experience. I wish there was more context. Like he needs to put out more on it. But, he went out to Restrepo in Afghanistan and experienced that at a very high level. And then even in his own reflection, leaving that, he was like, man, I'm missing something. And, societally, I think profoundly, likely a lot of the issues we're dealing with, depression, suicide, drug overdoses at a record high, are caused because of that lack of purpose, that lack of tribe. And maybe in a way, all the guys like myself, Evan Hafer, we're all trying to pick up our own tribes in our own way. I mean, that's certainly why I started my company.
No, I think there's definitely something to that. And there definitely seems to be this thing that happens to a lot of guys when they get out of the military. It happens to a lot of guys who do anything where you have a tight-knit group of people that are like-minded, that are trying to do the same thing. You see with fighters, too, where they retire from fighting and then they're not in the gym anymore. They're not training with guys anymore. They're not like... you're not traveling together all the time and supporting each other, and they lose themselves. And many of them start drinking. They get into drugs. They need something to try to either soothe themselves or give themselves some sort of a feeling, because the feelings that you have when you're training and fighting, I would imagine it's even far more extreme if you're in the military and then you're overseas and you're with these people and you have this intense bond, and then all of a sudden it goes away. Now you have none. Now you have no bond, and now you're doing a job that's not interesting at all. You're just getting paid. You're bored as fuck. You're watching TV. You're drinking beer, and you're like, what am I doing? Like, what is life?
Yeah, there's not many jobs that translate from a military experience, period. I mean, what are you going to be, a fucking cop? I mean, like you take
one of the few jobs, right?
One of the few jobs, but
cop, security.
But you take a guy like Andy Stump. I like picking on Andy. You take a guy like Andy, high level, experienced operator, and he gets out and he becomes a law enforcement officer. What would that look like? I mean, you got a guy who is, he was on the Jessica Lynch raid. He rescued Jessica Lynch. And he did all these high-level counterterrorism operations where he's on the varsity team. And then he gets back home, and now he's not even JV. I mean, he's not even relevant.
He's writing speeding tickets.
He's writing speeding tickets. His whole persona, by the way, most military guys' persona, especially in the special operations community, we wear that proudly, right? You go... Your whole life is not, the profession is not the job. It is your life. You work out 2 hours a day because you're a professional athlete. You pay attention to detail and planning and execution. You pay attention to kit. You shoot, move, and communicate every day. On the weekends, you're shooting civilian USPSA because you want to be better as a practical shooter so you can be better as an operator. All these things matter, and that's your life. And you churn what we call the playbook, where it's you train up for combat, you go to combat, and then you have a down cycle, which doesn't exist. And you do that for 20 years, 2 decades. And then the machine spits you out, and then what do? Well, you fucking die. I mean, for the most part, most of the guys that I know who aren't seeking purpose in some profound way, they fucking die. They kill themselves. Andy Stumpf and all these guys are doing, the 7 jumps, 7 continents for legacy expeditions. Amazing. They just did it. They did it in 6 days. And that kind of thing is their way of giving back and doing something profound. People think it's extreme to jump out of airplanes. Andy, Jericho, Logan, all these dudes, Mike Sorella, they could jump out of these airplanes like they brush their teeth in the morning. There's nothing extreme about it, but they're doing all they can to bring back purpose into their life, to give back. Because I think that's, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's giving back, whether it's building community, that's the closest thing that feels like it was on the teams, where you're doing something selfless in service. And guys miss that. And, I've had 3 guys that I know kill themselves in the last 90 days. Jesus. That come from my community of combat arms and special operations.
What kind of guidance is available, if any, to guys from special operations when they want to leave and enter into civilian life? Do they give you any sort of tools to mitigate the problems that would come up during that process?
There are some good nonprofits like Warriors Heart Foundation here in Texas with Tom Spooner. They do amazing things. They do amazing work. But there's nothing that I've seen that is fully integrated. Now, if you're a member of a special missions unit, a high-level player in counterterrorism, they have their nonprofits doing good work that are helping those guys out, because it's smaller numbers, I would say. But if you're a ranger, if you're a Green Beret, if you're a regular Army kid, you have no tools at your disposal. I mean, when I cleared the Army in a week and signed out of the military and then transitioned into the CIA. And there were no tools, no briefs, no understanding of what civilian life was going to be. So as much as we prep our guys to go downrange and put them in harm's way to kill bad guys, we should be thinking the same thing about setting them up for success.